Solomon says children are gifts from God to you. That they are gifts as an inheritance that God providentially assigns to you in your home. Children then are a gift and a reward. Grandchildren especially are, right? They're God's ultimate reward for you stewarding well the gift that He entrusted you with. You see, they're not a curse, but they're a blessing. They're a responsibility, not a burden. They're not an interruption. They're not an inconvenience. They're God's best to you. Therefore, investing in your family is the most profitable investment that you can ever make. You know, through the years, I've never met anyone who wished they spent more time at work, working. But I've met countless people who had wished they had spent more time with their family. God has so designed the family, your marriage, under His order and supervision, is the means in which God gives us your greatest significance in His great joy. Thus, a godly family is one of the greatest treasures God gives, and nothing rivals its worth. In fact, Solomon goes on to say that a godly family gives two blessings ongoingly. One, a meaningful impact. Number two, a lasting legacy. He says in verse 4, like arrows in the hand of a warrior are the children of one's youth. He invokes here a familiar imagery of protection. But in doing so, he stresses here an important proverb. You see, arrows are by nature an offensive weapon. Arrows follow the result and the intent of a bow. Arrows follow the consequences of what the bow has aimed at. And thus arrows were a means of great protection to warriors. And it's this imagery that Solomon to his audience enforces. The children, God's way, are an extension of their parents. That they continue this lineage and legacy of faith. Remember what God told Adam and Eve in the garden, that they were to go forth and multiply, that they were to rule and subdue and to have dominion over everything in the garden, that they would have children who would have children who would have children, that they were to be reminded of that they were made by God to live for God, that it was His glory that emanated from them because they were made in His image, that they were distinct from all other creation, and that in their responsibilities, they were not to worship the gift, but rather they were to fall more and more in love with the giver. And they were to live their life from moment to moment, from conversation to conversation, from house to house, for the glory of God. And it is this privilege that we have in raising godly families that God so graciously bestows to us. But see, spiritually, arrows can have an unquestionable impact. For those of us who choose an intentional investment of a prayerful biblical instruction, of Christ-centered devotion, of Spirit-led gospel multiplication in our home, we can have an ongoing, meaningful impact that grows the kingdom. The choice is just simply which bow we choose to place the arrow. Solomon now has belabored this point of you choosing one or two ways of life. Our way or God's way. One, God promises blessing and rest and fulfillment. The other one has no such promise. And so let's say that this arrow, given to me graciously by our next generation team, represents our way. You can get this arrow on Amazon for $6.46. You can go buy it at the Walmart at BA for $7. This bow is mass produced. It was not built with the end in mind. It was built on convenience. It was built as a means of other millions of other like bows, not to last, but to get your attention and to hold your attention, not on something that matters most, but on something that matters now. And thus this arrow reflects this bow. This arrow, you'll be able to shoot it, but not with the end or target in mind. But no, rather just for the mere fun of going through life. Of whatever it is that you try to desire, no objectives, no fulfillment, all now. And this arrow will last a handful of times. And then they're going to want you to buy another bow and arrow for $6.46 or $7. You see, that's the way the world is in our way. We don't live with the end in mind. We place a permanence on convenience and comfort. And thus, instead of our aim being on God's kingdom and Christ, we instead unintentionally aim it at ourselves or other things. And thus we go through life, home by home, relationship by relationship, job by job, earnestly seeking in this bow and in our way something that it was never intended to do. And we shoot these arrows out, and there's no meaningful impact. And the very thing that God entrusted to us, His best, His reward, without intentionality, without purpose, it's shot into the dark, never to be seen again. But by God's grace, there's another way. There's another way in which you and I can live and go about life. This was given to me by one of the greatest hunters in our entire church. It is not the exact bow, but it is a replica of the bow that his father made for him. A bow that was designed from the beginning with the end in mind. A bow that was made based upon the measurements of the one who was to shoot it. A bow who was made for the intent of the arrow to come from it. A bow that was made from the best wood money can buy to last generation to generation. This bow and arrow from Walmart's going to last 10 days. This one will last 100 years. A bow that was cured meticulously, perfected by time, the discipline of shooting over and over and over again, so the exact specifications of the bow and arrow can be entwined to fulfill the target and to accomplish meaningful impact. A bow that was strategically prepared with the arrow in mind. An arrow that is not flimsy. An arrow that you can't fold in your pocket and forget about. An arrow that is strategically designed to be precise in fulfilling the intent of the bow. An arrow that can hit a precise target over and over and over again. Not necessarily from me. I actually did this presentation at the 9:30 service with the bow backwards, right? But can I tell you, God has such a way by His grace of fulfilling you and through you if you choose His bow and His righteousness in His ways. God will take these arrows in places and in ways that you never even thought imaginable.